We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Hey Amid Beis in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 25b. The Gemara is continuing to analyze the Bryce on the previous Amud. The Bryce said that I might have thought, when it comes to Valde Kachim, not talking about Chatos, but other Karbonos, when it comes to Valde Kachim, the Pasuk is saying, bring it to the Beis HaMikdash and leave it there to die. And so the Gemara asked, why would I even think that? The halacha that you leave the animal to die is specifically by carbon chatas. It doesn't apply to other karbonos. And the Gemara says, no, what I might have thought is that when it comes to chatas, there you allow it to die anywhere. However, by other animals, uvalde kachim bebeis habechira. Maybe I might have thought when it comes to other valde kachim, you bring them to the Beis HaMikdash and you leave them to die. Kamash malon delo. So therefore, that's what it's teaching us. That is not the case with valde kachim. Rather, again, as we said, the valde kachim are used as nedava. They're used as karbonos on the mizbeach. And the Gemara continues, Katani, we learned in the Bryce above, Yachol af vlad chatas utmuras asham kain. I might think when it comes to the vlad chatas, the child of a carbon chatas, and the tmuras asham, the substitute for carbon asham, maybe the same thing is true. They should be brought in the mizbeach. Talmud lomar rak, so the pasuk says rak. It doesn't apply to chatas and asham. It only applies to ola and shlamim. And the Gemara asks, Lama likra, what do we need this pasuk for? Hilchasa gemiri lo, it's a halacha that's learned by tradition. Vlad chatos lamisa azal, that when it comes to the child of an animal, carbon chatos, it's left to die. And so the Gemara says, Hachinami, you're right. Ukra la'asham hudasa. That is a tradition, it's a halacha that's learned by tradition, but this pasuk that we're bringing, the pasuk of rak, it's actually for the carbon asham. But the Gemara says, Asham nami hilchasa gemirila. When it comes to Asham also, it's a halacha that's learned by tradition. We learned as follows, Kol she'ilu bechatas mesa, any situation where it's by a carbon chatas, you have to leave it to die. But Asham roa, so when it comes to the Asham, you leave it to graze until it develops a mum, until it develops a blemish. And the Gemara says, Ella rather, imei hilchasa hava amina, hilchasa v'yakrave lo l'chayev oleh. If we only had the halacha by tradition, I might have thought that it's a halacha, but let's say you actually end up bringing it on the mizbeach, so the person's not going to be chayev about that. V'lo klum, there's going to be no chayev if they bring it on the mizbeach. Kamash malon kra, that's what the pasuk teaches us. The makriv le koim ole beaseh. The pasuk is saying if you do bring it on the mizbeach, the person has violated a positive commandment. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting again from the previous brisa. Rabbi Akiva says, Eino tzarech, we don't need that pasuk. Hareu omer, because the pasuk says, Asham hu, it is an Asham, b'havayasu yehei, in its present state it should be, meaning to say if you have a substitute for the carbon Asham, that again is not going to be brought as an Asham. And the Gemara says again, Lama likra, what do we need the pasuk for? Gemara gemirin law, it's a tradition. Kol shebechatos mesa ba'asham roa, the halacha is, if it comes to carbon chatos and it has to be left to die, the same situation by carbon asham, it grazes until it gets a mum. The Gemara says, Hachanami, you're actually right, it is a tradition. V'chiyasa kra l'derav. What's the pasuk for? It's for the statement of Rav. D'yamar Rav Huna Rav, because Rav Huna said that Rav said, Asham shenitak l'riya. Let's say you have this carbon asham, and the ruling is that it has to be left, it has to be consigned to graze until it develops a mum. V'shachtu l'shem ola, and then at that point in time already, you're going to shecht it for the sake of a carbon ola. Kosher, it's going to be kosher in that situation. And so the pasuk is teaching us as follows: Time with the nitak, the only reason that it's kosher as a carbon ola is because it was already left to graze. Halonitic, but if you hadn't yet consigned it that it's grazing until it develops a mum, lo, then that would not be the case. The Yamar Kra, that's what the pasuk means when it says Hu b'havayaso yehei, that it has to be in its present state. And the idea over here is that normally when you have an asham shenitik l're'iyah, an asham that is left to graze, so you leave it to graze until it develops a blemish. When it develops that mum, you sell it and you use the money for carbon ola on the mizbeach. And Rav was teaching us that if you have this asham shenitik l're'iyah, again, it was consigned for grazing to develop a mum, and instead what you do is after that point in time, once it was nitik l're'iyah, you bring it as a carbon ola, it's going to be kosher, and the pasuk is teaching us that's only true in a situation where it was already consigned to graze to develop a mum, but if you try to bring it as a carbon ola before that, that is not going to be effective. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, this is Rabbi Yochanan, what Rabbi Yochanan said on the previous Amud, halacha hi ben Nazir. It's a particular halacha when it comes to Nazir. Let's say you have a situation where, again, a Nazir separated money for his karbonos, then he dies, so in that situation you use that money for communal offerings, even though mixed into that money is money that would have went for a carbon chatas, special halacha by Nazir, that it can be used for these donation offerings. But the Gemara says, V'su leka, is that really true? It's only by Nazir and no other scenarios do we have such a halacha. V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, Ushar chayvei kinin shebetorah, the rest of those who are obligated by the Torah to bring nests, meaning we're talking about those who are poor, and they're chayiv to bring bird karbonos. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chavav Amud Aleph.